Okay, this is Karen Launchbaugh again. Just one more example to help you envision what grazing systems look like and read calendars as we might apply to grazing systems. Okay, first of all, let's think about the continuous or season-long grazing. And let's say that we had this salmon ranch right here that has 6 pastures and a few different grazing sites. And I'm going to apply a number of different systems to this same to the same ranch. First of all, if we took all the fences out and we applied continuous or season-long grazing, remember that's when we put the animals in the whole ranch, the entire grazable area for an entire year or season. It's simple. If we had a group of cows and sheep here, and on the bottom you see our calendar, every year we would put them in April and take them out in October, which would be the grazing season for this year. Again, animals have full choices. They go wherever they want. They got wells, they got water tanks, they got roads, streams. They can go anywhere they want. And animal performance would be high. Okay, now let's say that we were a little worried about some aspects of a ranch and we wanted to defer some of the areas. Or in other words, we wanted to leave them ungrazed until after seed set. Then we could apply a deferred rotation system. It would be a very simple one. If we took the whole ranch, we divided it in half. And if you see in the bottom where the red arrow is, if we grazed the first pasture from April to July, and then we moved the animals to the west pasture from July to October, that means that the west pasture would be deferred. It would not be grazed until after seed set. The next year then we would start the animals in the west pasture and we'd move them to the east pasture, so in that next year the deferment would be in the east pasture because it would be the one that was not grazed during the spring. Okay, so that was a simple system. What if we had 3 pastures, deferred rotation? So now we took the ranch, we divided it into 3. The first year, the deferred pasture is the south pasture because we're starting in north, and then we're going to the center pasture, and we're going to the south pasture. So that's deferred. It's not grazed until after seed set. In this case, the central pasture, depending on when seed set it is, it might also be deferred. In year 2 then, well, let's start in the center pasture. So that's the one that's grazed in the spring. And then go to the south pasture. And in this case, it's the north pasture that would be deferred because we wouldn't move animals to that pasture until the middle of August. In year 3 then, we start in the south pasture, we move to the north pasture, and it's the center pasture that's deferred because we would not graze it until August. Rest rotations are similar, except that in this case we leave 1 pasture ungrazed for a whole year. If we had 3 pastures, you have to have at least 3 pastures to make this work. And if we had 3 pastures, it would look like this. Let's start in the north pasture in year 1. Let's graze the north and center pasture. Let's leave the south pasture ungrazed or rested in that first year. In year 2, let's start in the south pasture and move to the north pasture and leave the center pasture ungrazed. So that is the one that would be receiving the rest. And then in the last year, the 3rd year, we'd start in the center pasture and move to the south pasture and then to the north pasture. So in that case, you can see how the rest rotates through the 3 pastures. Okay, now I've given you a little bit of preview. Let's think about this intensive rotation, high intensity, low frequency, short duration, also called management intensive grazing. It's when you graze every pasture for a very short time and you give it quite a long period of rest. In this case, we took the ranch, we divided it into 6 pastures. And we start at A, and after a few days we go to pasture B, a few more days we go to C, D, E, and F. So what happened to pasture A, think about that, it was grazed for about 15 days. Then it was left ungrazed for about 2.5 months so that it had time to rest, and then the livestock were moved back into that pasture in the middle of July and moved out quite quickly to pasture B, and again that pasture had quite some time of rest, about almost three months of rest. So what this system does is it gives each pasture a short period of grazing and a long period of rest. So those are just the elements so you can kind of see what these pastures look like and how the grazing is rotated among them. Even though the cattle are rotated, it's actually the deferment that's rotated, the rest that's rotated. So I hope that that helps to just help you envision where animals are moving during rotations and how to read grazing calendars.